Well, welcome to this edition of Herb of the Week or Herb of the Week, depending on your preferred English translation or pronunciation of that word. With me, Stephanie Georgieff, your host and instructor for the Botanical Medicine Study course. I hope everyone is as well as can be as the seasons are changing. Here where I am in the Northern Hemisphere, we're enjoying the first delightful days of autumn. Now, I know at the time of the posting of this video, some places on the planet have not experienced these early days of autumn very positively, and I hope that relief comes in the areas where there have been terrible storms, and they seem to be happening everywhere. One can imagine from North America to Central Europe to Nepal. Now, there are several things you can do in the short term. You can donate to reputable organizations. I was raised as a United Methodist, and UMCOR, United Methodist Committee on Relief, is our relief organization that is on the ground in areas affected by current extreme weather. And my mother was a dedicated member of this organization, and she always used to say 90% of every dollar that you give goes to relief. So if you want to, that is a good way to do that. And there are other faith groups from the Jewish agencies and Islamic agencies and all sorts of different agencies that you can donate to if you can't. The other one is World Kitchen, which if I was in the area, I would join up with them. They provide meals for people. So I do have a couple of links in the program notes. If you're watching this video way after these terrible storms, you can always donate to them in downtimes because the money will be saved for future use. Now, in the long term, something you can do is to choose, and I'm very serious about this, choose healthcare options that are not reliant on petroleum products. And this is a big thing you can do for the environment. And if you sign up for my course, I'll do a whole session on that. But for now, it's good to try and rely on healthcare practices and options that are not reliant on petroleum products, and to participate in things like biodynamic gardening, which works to restore the land as well as improve the human-earth connections. And again, I have links in the program notes. This is a really powerful thing you can do to really heal the planet. Now, as autumn in traditional Chinese medicine is the season of metal in the 5-element paradigm, it dominates the lung and large intestine. So that's the focus of the health during the season of metal in Chinese medicine. And the taste of the herbs that heal and nourish these systems is spicy or pungent. So for the next few episodes, we will be exploring herbs that nourish this system. And if you've seen the last few episodes, you know that we've been looking at spicy or pungent herbs. And this beautiful plant that you can see in front of you, courtesy of Wikipedia Commons, this plant is often associated with cuisine, but also has been used since antiquity as medicine, and it's called horseradish. Now, I used to have a radio program when I lived in the Inland Empire. It was called Real Food Empire, and I would cover foods and herbs and farmers and makers and all sorts of things like that. And the thing that just never ceased to amuse me and just endear me to my fellow humans is the fact that there's a society for everything. And according to the Herb Society of America, the common name horseradish may be a derivation of the German term Mittrich, which means more radish or stronger radish. And the English, who had to change the name of everything to fit them, may have confused the term mere with that of mare, or thinking that it was the mare, which is the proper term for a female horse. So instead of mere trick, it was more mare or horseradish. Now, in southern Germany and Austria, and I've lived in southern Germany, and I can tell you horseradish is very popular in that part of the world. It's a wonderful condiment with everything. And the regional term kren refers to horseradish. Now, there's actually a horseradish society, as my fellow humans just beg to be adored by me, and it's called Horseradish Information Council. For those of us who would like to attend their meetings, it was founded in 1964, and the council maintains offices in Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Brussels, Belgium. And you can also find them on Twitter at Kellen Company. And I just call it Twitter. You can call it whatever else you want. And I do have a link in the program notes for those of you who really want to find out everything possible. I mean, there's no little root hair left untwisted on this plant. They just have all kinds of information there. And one of my favorite quotes on the horseradish history page of the exceptional informative websites is, quote, "Legend has it that Delphic oracle told Apollo, quote, the radish is worth its weight in lead, the beet its weight in silver, the horseradish its weight in gold." So there you have it from the big A, Apollo. Now, the botanical term is called Amoraceae rusticana, and it's native to southeastern Europe and Western Asia. And it's a perennial plant of the family Brassiaceae, and that's like the cabbage and cauliflower and Brussels sprout family. That's so, oh, broccoli too. So that's such a great family. You have to eat part of that family every day, and you will live forever. And this family is known for its health-promoting phytochemicals and anti-cancer agents, and mainly because it has glucosinolates and iothiocyanate derivatives and lots of vitamins. Now, horseradish actually is considered a root vegetable, and it has been cultivated and used worldwide, both as a spice. You can order dried horseradish powder to shake on things like pepper, and also as a condiment. And what type of British meal would be complete? You know, prime rib without a good horseradish sauce. Now, horseradish, and it's interesting, the herb is so pungent, and the plant is just so innocuous looking. I just think it looks very gentle. But the horseradish plant grows up to about 5 feet tall, about 1.5 meters. And it has hairless, bright green, unlobed leaves, which in my opinion kind of look like sorrel. It's cultivated mostly for its root, which is very large, and it's tapered. And in my opinion, it's taupe. That's what I think it is. Now, the white 4-petaled flowers are scented, and this is also a plant. If you decide to put it in your garden, it will take over. And it might be quite invasive. Now, cultivation of this plant dates back to the Roman and Greek times, about 2,000 years ago. But wild horseradish was used in Egyptian cuisine, when the Egyptians were the dominant culture, like 3,000 years ago. And in Europe, it has been used in dishes since the Middle Ages. So it became quite popular, particularly in Middle and Northern Europe. The dried and ground root bulb, root of the horseradish is, as I said, it's used in condiments, and it has been naturalized all over the place, but particularly in North America. Now, the root has, if you can buy this in a lot of different grocery stores. You can find it. You just need to make sure you're not buying rutabagas and you want horseradish. It's got very little aroma. It doesn't remind you of that spicy condiment, but when it's cut or grated, there are enzymes in the plant cells that produce the same thing that is in mustard oil. It's called allyl isocyanate. And that's, in my opinion, part of the glory of the Brassiaceae family. And it's one of the reasons why all of the plants in that family tend to be a little bit bitter, spicy, pungent. But it also is very healing. In the United States, horseradish is grown in several areas, such as Wisconsin and in Tule Lake in California. But the most is grown in the Collinsville, Illinois region. So it's interesting when you go through all these different states, what they grow. Now, what I think is also interesting, that 30,000 metric tons of horseradish are produced in Europe every year, and Hungary seems to be the leader in that. So there you go. Now, the medicinal actions, most of us consider horseradish a condiment. And in my opinion, this is sort of the symbol of the transition of eating for health, or the old application of medicine, which used to be through your food, into just looking at things as condiments, because they're actually, horseradish is really good for you. And one of the reasons horseradish is served in cuisines that tend to be very high in fat, which is the British foods and the Germanic foods, is it really is a stimulant for the liver, and it helps the liver to produce bile, which digests fat. So the other condiment slash medicine that does that is mustard, and isn't it interesting that they're in the same family? Now, it's a stimulant for the liver. It also is a stimulant for your digestive system and your circulatory system. And it acts as a diaphoretic, which means it makes you sweat. And when you sweat, your fever goes down. And that's why horseradish is really used in a lot of cold and flu remedies. It's also wonderful to eat it to help unblock sinus passages. It's a diuretic. It's really, really wonderful for that. And it also is something called a rubefacient. And rubefacient basically means something that you rub on your skin and it turns red. Rubor is redness in Latin. And that is an old folk remedy for joint pains, because it's very warming. You rub that on your sore joints and they turn red and you feel better. It also, in the diuretic properties, it increases the excretion of uric acid in the body. And for those of you who are eating a lot of high-fat foods and getting gout, that's the buildup of uric acid. So this is something you should actually eat on a regular basis, because you want to get rid of that uric acid, and horseradish is a way to do that. It's an antiseptic. It kills microbes. It disinfects And it also is antibiotic. It's really, really good for that. Um, it's it is really good for things like asthma, coughs. You know, if you have colic, I would not use this with infants with colic, but for older people, if you get a lot of gas pains, um, it's really good for that. And it's also because of all the constituents in it, that's because of its membership in the Brassiaceae family. It's a really good preventative for cancer. Um, so it's also, if you have gout, it helps in the treatment of gout, and it also helps with any type of respiratory tract infection. Now, the constituents of Brassiaceae, as we know, has lots, because this family is just really healthy. It has lots of the same chemicals that you can find in all of those plants, such as cabbage, broccoli, mustard, etc. So there's lots of anti-cancer agents, and the big one that is antimicrobial, etc., etc. And it also produces this distinct, pungent, spicy taste of horseradish, is the compound of allyl isothiocyanate. And this is the creature that does all of those things in this herb. So it helps control bacterial infections. It also has a lot of vitamin C in it. And this is why it's really good for the digestive system and your immune system, and preventing cancer and helping out with respiratory infections. And in the olden days, I have never done this personally, and I can't say, oh yeah, do this, but the root used to be pounded out and applied externally as a poultice for infected wounds. And I'm sure that would be really enlivening, let's say. I'm sure that would sting quite a bit. It also was used as a poultice for chest colds and on arthritic joints. So have at it. I have never done that. I can't suggest it. If you are going to do this, I would do a little patch test first to make sure you're not going to give yourself tons of blisters, and then go for it. Now, the supplements that are available, most of the horseradish that is taken for whatever reason is usually as a condiment. I've never personally seen it in things like capsules by itself. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It just means I've never seen that. You obviously can purchase prepared horseradish. Just look at the label, make sure it's just not pure, cottonseed oil with some horseradish mixed in for good measure. But if it's mostly horseradish with maybe some sort of dairy product, if you're not allergic to dairy products, you certainly can, enjoy that. And you can also get it in powdered granular form. You can shake that on your food. You can put it in your soups, however you want to eat it. And you can also find in some supplement makers, they actually have tincture of horseradish, and but you can always make your own tincture with that. It's basically make it with any type of natural vinegar, like apple cider vinegar. It's very pungent, but it'll certainly do the trick, especially opening up sinuses that are clogged. Now, cooking with horseradish tends to be mostly, I've not seen a whole lot of horseradish other than I'll do a separate video on wasabi, which is Japanese horseradish. It's a similar but different plant. But you usually see horseradish in what we would consider carnivore cuisines and heavier cuisines. And it's usually served with meat because it actually enhances your digestion. Now, this is something I never noticed when I was living in Germany, but the leaves are used in salads and in sandwiches. I've never done that, but I can imagine it probably would taste pretty good. And the grated roots, you can use those alone, or you can combine them with things like beets or apples. And it goes well on most things. It's really good with fish. It's nice with chicken, pork, beef. And the traditional horseradish sauce, and I have a link for some recipes, and I'm sure you can find that on the Horseradish Information Council website. It's usually mixed with vinegar and cream. And in Eastern Europe, it's used as a condiment in combination with beets. And when I was living which isn't technically Eastern Europe, but Germany used it a lot. But when I was visiting Russia, this was a very common condiment. And they thought I was really interesting as an American. And this was way back in the early 90s when I would just pile my plate with horseradish because I thought it was yummy. You can, it's mostly used as in dips and sauces. You can also add it to things like soup. You can add it, the traditional cocktail sauce for like shrimp cocktail is like ketchup with horseradish. So there's all kinds of different things you can do with it. And again, I have a link in the program notes. Now, one of the most amazing things to do with horseradish is to make something called fire cider. And I have a link in the program notes. It's a wonderful recipe. And it's specific for colds and flus, especially really like your sinuses feel like somebody filled them up with cement. This will open them up. And, they say, drink this and make sure you have a lot of tissues on hand and you're not going to give a public address or something like that. But I first learned about this in naturopathic school, and that's where I started using it personally. And it just has all sorts of good things in it. Apple cider vinegar, cayenne pepper, garlic, horseradish, onion, raw honey, and ginger. And you basically make basically a tincture. And then you strain off the plant material after a couple of weeks. And again, there's a recipe for this in the program notes. And then you just take a couple teaspoons of this a couple times a day, drink it down, put it in some tea, however you want to choke it down, because it's very pungent. And this will do the trick. Now, you can grow horseradish. It's a wonderful plant to put in the garden. And again, it's one of those plants where it's probably best to put it in a container garden, or if you're going to put it right in the ground, make sure you do some sort of underground container like you would for comfrey or mint or something like that, because it will take over your yard. But there are all kinds of ways that you can grow this. You can, as like I said, because it's native to Eastern Europe, it's a pretty hardy plant. So if you live in an area that's kind of cold during the winters, this might be a nice plant to put into your garden. And the leaves, as I said, are quite tasty. So you can always harvest those leaves. And after a couple years, you can start getting those roots and doing wonderful things with that. So however you want to incorporate this lovely plant into your life, if you want to make delicious sauces or a fire cider so that you're armed for the inevitable colds and flus of this changing season, or if you want to put it as a plant in your garden. I really hope you come to appreciate this wonderful gift from nature, horseradish. So this is Stephanie Georgia saying thank you so much for spending your valuable time with me. Make sure to check out all those links in the program notes, recipes, societies, all kinds of things. And until next time, be well.